Greetings and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into Chapter 12 of Arianna's tale. Arianna awoke slowly to the smell of something succulent and delicious. She opened her eyes, searching for the source of the aroma. She was starving and felt as if she'd eat just about anything. She firmly ignored the nausea that rose up at the thought of food. Bloody, contradictory, she stopped the thought, surprised that she'd sworn, if only in her head. It was certainly unlike her. "Good morning, milady," a plump-faced elderly woman said cheerfully, pulling back the curtains concealing the bed and placing a tray of food beside Arianna. The woman would have said more, but at that moment the prince entered the room. He dismissed the elderly slave woman with a glance, not giving her the chance to fall to her knees in obedience, and moved toward Arianna, who backed herself up against the headboard. Damuk glanced toward her briefly and was about to say something when he faintly heard her stomach growl. "Eat something," he said shortly. She was obviously hungry, and he remembered that she hadn't eaten in quite a while. That was not well done of him. She was carrying his child, and it was his responsibility to take care of her. That meant feeding her. She didn't want to do what he told her, but she was hungry. Deciding arguing would only backfire and keeping a wary eye on the prince, she moved closer to the tray on the bed. Really seeing it for the first time, she was amazed at the food that had been placed before her. There were 3 different types of fresh bread, soft butter, and a variety of cheeses, some fruit, and even the meat of some game bird she couldn't identify. Arianna had never seen such a meal, certainly not to break her fast. Her morning meals usually consisted of day-old bread and stewed rabbit, which was the only meat she'd ever been able to afford from the butcher. This was a meal fit for a prince, she realized belatedly. She took some bread, noting that it was still warm, and smeared it with the butter. As she bit into it, she closed her eyes, almost fainting from pleasure. She'd never had such sweet butter in her life. She heard Damuk chuckle and threw the bread back onto the tray. She wouldn't provide him with a moment of pleasure, not if she could avoid it. She tried desperately to get a grip on another feeling, one that he didn't deserve. "Eat," he ordered, still smiling. "We will be leaving shortly. By tomorrow evening, we will be home." He turned away from her and headed toward the large windows. "Your home, not mine," Arianna retorted, picking up the bread again. He only shrugged without looking at her, and she thought he might actually be in a good mood. Chewing the bread slowly, she took in her surroundings. The room was beautiful. There were carpets, real carpets, not furs, covering every inch of the floor. The many curtains in the room were definitely made of silk, as were the sheets she had slept on, and everything was marked with the falcon in flight. They were obviously in the Empire now. And the colors, mostly red, gold, and black, were rich, bold, and strong. A very masculine room, but still beautiful. There was a fireplace, though the fire was not lit, before which there were several large pillows and a luxurious couch. Damuk had taken a seat in one of the large winged chairs near the windows and was now reading several papers he'd brought into the room with him. Focusing more on the windows, Arianna saw that they were glass instead of the usual oiled goatskin. Glass. She had never seen real glass, only heard about it from traders and from the mayor's wife. No one in her village could have ever afforded such luxury, not even the mayor. In fact, there wasn't one thing in this room that anyone in her village could have afforded, not even the curtain ties. The mayor's wife would have had a fit, seeing the beauty of the room and knowing she could never match it, not if she saved every pence for the next 100 years. "Where are we?" she asked, feeling a little overwhelmed. Damuk was busy studying reports and didn't look at her. The outpost of Dupree, not far from the ice shelf. He waved his hand to indicate the surrounding room, but still didn't raise his eyes from his task. "They keep these rooms prepared for me since the outpost is mine." Arianna picked up a fruit that was a pale red in color. "If this is your outpost, what's your home like?" She bit into the fruit, surprised at the pleasantly tangy taste. She wondered briefly what other surprises lay in store for her, then shook the thought off as unimportant. It was a rhetorical question, so he didn't bother answering her. A few moments later, two burly men entered the room carrying a large tub, porcelain not wood, which they set before the fireplace. Several other slaves followed, all carrying buckets of steaming water which they dumped into the bathing tub. When they had retreated, Damuk finally looked at her. "Bathe, quickly. We must be off within the next candle mark." He returned his attention to the reports in front of him. He had obviously already bathed and dressed and expected her to follow suit. She knew it was useless to ask him to leave, but she tried anyway for the sake of her pride and modesty. She decided to try being polite, thinking maybe that would get different results than fighting him constantly. "Could you please?" "No." That one word said everything. Nothing had changed since yesterday. She was still his, and she would still do as he pleased, or he would force her to. She didn't like it, but there wasn't anything she could do about it right now. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and moved toward the tub, taking the sheet with her. She thought she could avoid his gaze effectively. She stood beside the tub, with her back to him, and stepped in, releasing the sheet only as she slid into the water. The warmth was heavenly, especially after the bone-chilling cold of the previous day. She let her head fall back and closed her eyes, reveling in the heat of the water, which was almost too hot to stand. She felt a hand on her shoulder and jerked upright, covering herself instinctively. Damuk was kneeling beside the tub with his hand outstretched. She saw that he held soap and took it gingerly from him, expecting him to pounce on her. He rose and returned to his chair, not saying a single word. Arianna's eyes widened. He is in a good mood, she thought, considering what that meant. Maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be so cruel today. She washed, totally absorbed in the scent of the soap. It was lavender, unless she was mistaken. It was far better than the lies she was used to. The soapmaker back in Akana Valley did sell beautifully colored and scented soaps, but only the mayor's wife had enough money for them. She'd often looked at the brightly colored soaps longingly, but had known she'd never be able to afford them. Not if she wanted dinner on the table. Half a candle mark later, she had completed her bath and was simply enjoying the water when she was hauled to her feet by Damuk. She squealed and made yet another attempt to cover herself. "Be still," he ordered. She wanted to fight him, but decided not to, since there was something she wanted from him, and his good mood provided her with maybe the only opportunity she was likely to get. If she fought him, he'd never do as she asked. Acting against every instinct she possessed, she held herself carefully still. Damuk quickly dried her off with a fluffy towel, wondering her compliance, and then directed her toward the clothing on the bed, which seemed to have materialized out of nowhere. The clothing wasn't hers. She glanced at him, a question in her eyes. He shrugged, his eyes still admiring her form. "I asked for clothing for you, enough to get us to Crown City. The clothing you had is threadbare and no better than rags. Nothing you own is fine enough to enter the capital." Arianna bristled at his high-handedness, but said nothing. A small tear came to her eye at his tone of disdain, but she blinked it away. After all, it wasn't her fault she couldn't afford better. She wasn't a noble. She'd never been ashamed to be a peasant before, and she refused to start feeling that way now. Not everyone could be born a royal, after all. She dressed while he gathered his reports and placed them in his saddlebags. She quietly approached him, more than a little nervous. If only he would show one shred of kindness towards her. "Prince Damuk?" she inquired, her voice soft. He raised an eyebrow and faced her, wondering what this was about. She had not once called him by title or name these past few days, and her tone was always scathing, not gentle as it was now. It was obvious the girl wanted something, and he was fairly certain he knew what it was. He waited patiently for her to speak. She tried to smile, but it was difficult, for her chest was now tight with fear. If he decided to get angry at her request, well, she feared the results. "I was wondering if you'd be so kind as to—" "No," he replied simply, knowing she was going to ask for her freedom, hoping that he just might comply. "But my brother, he'll be worried about me." Her pleading tone had turned to petulance. He noticed that it happened when she was tired or stressed. Damuk smiled, still in a good mood since he had been expecting this particular request since she woke. I don't care what your brother feels, sweetheart. You are going with me. End of discussion. The young squire entered the room to take his saddlebags, so he took Arianna by the arm. We've wasted enough time here. Let's go. Just as he was about to haul her from the room, she burst into uncontrollable tears. He released her, and Arianna collapsed to the floor in a heap, still weeping. Damuk held onto his temper, knowing that the stress of the last few days certainly gave her the right to cry. He knelt beside her and gathered her in his arms. Hush, he said gently. I'm not going to harm you, but you will come with me. You will be safe, and your child as well. Arianna's sobs lessened slowly, though she said nothing. What could she say? That she didn't want to go? She tried that. Right now she had no way to escape. She vowed to keep trying no matter the cost. Damuk helped her off the floor and firmly guided her toward the door. She struggled and even tried to bite him, but there was no way to free herself. Before she knew it, she found herself on the back of his horse, sitting before him, and she cried again. And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moment in the comments. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.